Welcome to episode 325 of the DFO Rundown, presented by Fountain Tire. You got a few days left. Don't wait. Save up to 25% off select tires, including Goodyear, but only until the 10th of October. Find a location near you at fountaintire.com. I'm Jason Gregor, as Frank Seravalli joins us live in Utah, where the Utah Hockey Club will officially become the 40th franchise in NHL history when they drop the puck on their season this week, Frank. And there's 32 active, now 8 defunct, including the Arizona franchise. So Utah is brand new, and we'll see how they do their first time through the NHL.
It's funny that you mentioned a number, because the one thing that I could not get out of my head yesterday as I arrived in Salt Lake City, went to their practice facility at the Utah Olympic Oval, which I'll talk about in a second. The one number that stood out to me is the NHL is no longer a 31.5 team league. This is a full 32 now. And with all due respect to the Arizona Coyotes of past, especially the last number of years, they didn't do nearly enough to equip that team for success. And this is a total clean, fresh slate for these players, for this management group, for these fans that are now embracing a team that I think is so incredibly well positioned for success, which we'll also talk about. But this is a humongous moment for the NHL. That's why I'm here. You've now got 32 franchises on equal footing, which, for one reason or another, there's always kind of been a problem hotspot in the NHL that just doesn't exist anymore. And you see this arena behind me, if I could point to the correct side, it's going to change rapidly. We're talking about a $900 million change and reformatting, restructuring of this entire arena. Basically, as soon as Utah Hockey Club plays their final game this upcoming season, there's going to be a crane in the middle of the ice knocking stuff down to change it and get rid of these obstructed view seats. Everything's on the rise, and I can tell you that this team is on the rise. So I'm looking forward to watching it all come together. And this city they're excited. They're ready for hockey.
Well, Franco, coming out later today, I have 100 stats for the upcoming NHL season. Involves every team, from milestones that people are chasing for their organization, slumps, streaks, etc. There's only been since the expansion in 67, 68, so there's 20. This will be the 28th franchise overall at time. If you look at these teams, only 3 of them made the playoffs in their first year. Do you know any of the 3?
Vegas?
Yes.
Since when? What year?
68.
Philadelphia?
No.
St. Louis?
No.
What do you mean St. Louis didn't make the playoffs their first year?
Yeah, well, according to the NHL, they have Edmonton.
They went to the Cup final the first 3 years of their existence.
Yeah, but they don't consider them. I don't know for what reason they didn't have them listed as a new franchise. I don't know what the definition is, but
they were part of the next 6 after.
Yeah. Dude, I'm just going off what the
original.
NHL.
That's wrong. They played the entire division that year was an expansion division, and they played against the original 6 division.
I agree with you.
Which is why they got thumped and swept in the Cup final the first
4
3
years in a row. 3 or 4
years in a row. So that's okay. Go ahead. What's your answer then?
Well, they have it as Edmonton and Hartford.
Okay.
Yeah. Which doesn't make sense now that you say St. Louis. So we'll have to talk to the NHL PR guys about that one.
Yes. Anyway,
but Vegas, Seattle, by the way, this afternoon, Frank, Seattle will do something they've never done, which is open their season at home, which is odd because you're in Utah, right? You would think when the franchise comes in, their first game of the season would be at home. Seattle's never played a home game to start their season until this afternoon game against the Blues.
Yeah, I get the idea of a triple header, but putting a opening day Tuesday 1:30 start in Seattle is certainly questionable. I was in Seattle for the first ever game there, and that was a little different because they were still scrambling. Like when I walked in, like arena workers were still literally bolting down seats. Like that's how close they cut it to getting that thing done.
Really?
So it was a sprint, but this has been a sprint of a different kind. I mean, think about where this team was 5 months ago, 5.5 months ago. No designs. Players had no idea about Salt Lake City, had never been here, no jerseys, no rink, no practice rink, nothing to speak of. This has been borderline unprecedented to get to this point. And I know things happened really fast for Atlanta to Winnipeg, but this is still quite impressive.
Oh, yeah. It's well, you look at the Smith family and their commitment to the team. You look at I think they're looking at things that work in other leagues. They're going to bring it to them and how they promote their team. You see their concession prices, which will happen for both the NBA and the NHL teams. $2 and $3
Smith referred to that. He referred to that yesterday as our Augusta National pricing.
Yeah, and you know what? Awesome. Like the Atlanta Falcons, I know did it in the NFL, and got rave reviews by people. And so you look at some families when you go to a game, and you want to get a bottle of water, and it's $6. Like, give me a break. So I from a smart perspective of wanting to understand your fan base, that is a very good start, in my opinion.
Well, I think in speaking with Ryan and Ashley Smith yesterday, they also recognize, which I think is really important, that they don't know everything, that they're going to make mistakes. This is new for them. But one of the things that I liked that I heard yesterday was one of the first things they did. They said, look, they get the team, they bring them in. They said, we have to make 1,000 decisions between now and opening night. Can you guys, as the team, the players, can you tell us what's important to you so that we don't have to guess? So some of the things that they heard in response were better travel, better hotels on the road, team meals, a chef, better nutrition, all things that they weren't getting in Arizona. And the bar is kind of low. Like guys that have played on other teams have been saying, yeah, well, that's been the standard for years in the NHL. They just weren't getting that in Arizona. So as a result of that, their sort of team mantra right now is no excuses. Like they've given them every opportunity to succeed. And that doesn't necessarily mean that when you get to opening night and you get to this inaugural season that you're going to win and instantly become a playoff team. By the way, I picked them as a playoff team this year because I think their team's quite good, but they're giving them an opportunity to succeed from every vantage point, which I think is really important.
You look at their team, Frank, and since the wild card was brought into the NHL in 13-14, every year except 2020, there's been a team who missed the playoffs by at least 10 points the previous year, but then made it, right? Vancouver, Washington last year, both missed by 12. They both made it last season. So
we have a guarantee that one of those teams is going to be this year, the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, they're 10. They're right on that cusp, right? Because they're 10 points back. So if there's only one, I think we would all agree it's them. But if you look further, I think Utah and I know Utah is a new franchise, but let's be honest. We all know they're in Arizona last year. Utah, Seattle, or Ottawa. If you had to pick one of those three, who do you give the best chance to come from outside of a 10-point deficit to make the playoffs?
Utah. And part of the reason for that is they've really improved their back end. Mikael Sergachev is a massive trade. And I do want to share the story of how Bill Armstrong landed on Sergachev. But don't sleep on Ian Cole, who's riding a 9-year playoff streak. And I talked to him in Vancouver last year before the start of the season. I said, why Van? He said, because I believe in this team. He's not signing in Utah just for fun. Plus, their influx and continued growth of young stars. Dylan Guenther signs a $50+ million contract. Clayton Keller, not so young anymore, takes over as team captain. The dawn of a new era from that perspective. Logan Cooley, what's the next step in his evolution? So I put this in my 32 bold predictions yesterday. I believe Utah Hockey Club is the team best positioned right now for present and future success. What I mean by that is, first off, they can't even sign all the guys that they've drafted. There's a 50 contract limit, and they're going to have to be really judicious about the contracts that they give out. They've still got an abundance of draft picks left to move. They've got cap space because Sergachev is their highest paid player at $8.15 million. And they've now got a market that I believe, just listening to Sergachev tell his story about his neighbors and what this place is like, this is a place where people are going to want to play. So they've got all those things working in their favor, plus a team that should be way more competitive now. Think about what was hanging over their heads last year. They're in great shape. And if you want to hear the story about how Armstrong landed on Sergachev, it's a good one. He was calling around. He said, I called all 31 other teams. He said, maybe stupid. He said, maybe the dumbest thing you could do. Because he goes, I got hung up on a lot. He said, I'd call and I'd say, what would it take to get player X off of your roster? Young guy in his, kind of just hitting the prime of his career. Really good player. He said 25 of those teams hung up on him. A couple teams filed it away, and no one was like, hey, yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. But he said what that did was plant a seed that later at the draft week, he gets a call from Julien Brisebois in Tampa that said, hey, you expressed interest in Sergachev before. Are you still interested? And so sometimes that idea of planting the seed and letting someone know that you're interested in a player, that comes back in a big way, even if in the moment it might feel like a fool's errand.
Yeah, you never know. Throw out the line and see if anybody bites. They might not bite right away, but obviously in due time, some team will be interested. And like if you look back at Tampa Bay, they're obviously very high in Ryan McDonagh. They feel that Ryan McDonagh brings something to them that they were really lacking, and away they went. So because they brought in McDonagh, Frank, if you recall, even before they traded Sergachev. So I think they felt like that's what they needed. And Tampa Bay is a fascinating team to me for a variety of reasons. So, their longtime captain, Steven Stamkos, leaves, was pretty adamant that he didn't want to leave, and it didn't work out. We'll see who was Tampa Bay. Were they correct? Some people say it's not as much as just losing Stamkos, the player. It's also losing him as the captain. They do have Hedman and Kucherov. Like, they got a lot of their core guys still there, Braden Point, et cetera, their head coach. So I am curious to see how Tampa goes. Vasilevsky will be healthy to start this season. I think that's obviously going to be a benefit to them. Tampa Bay is on my list of really interesting teams to watch. I see a lot of people think, oh, this is the year they fall out. And I understand it because those top four teams in the Atlantic, the other teams haven't made any inroads. Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs 13 years in a row. Detroit is 8. Ottawa is 7. Right? I know Montreal had their run that kind of surprised a lot of people during the shortened 21 season, right? When there was the 4 divisions, all Canadian division, et cetera. But when they've been in the Atlantic, they haven't had a ton of success either. So I understand the theory because I'm one who thinks, well, God, somebody's got to fall back. But I don't think it's going to be Tampa Bay.
Well, first off, wanted to say that thinking of all the Lightning players, staff, and their families, I can tell you that team is on the road, and there's a lot of fear and angst and worry about Hurricane Milton bearing down on their city, their families. I know from talking to players yesterday that team they're in tough shape mentally this week with a lot going on off the ice. So wanted to say, thinking of them, I'm with you, but I do think we talked about in our Atlantic Division preview the idea of a redistribution of points within the division. And it's not like Tampa has made the playoffs the last couple years by crazy big margins. Like, they've still been a high 90-point team. It's not like they've been at 110 and you're going to have this massive drop off. I ultimately ended up on Tampa being out this year. I just think their defense has a really significant way. And I get that they feel like they needed Ryan McDonagh back, but I mean, is he on hole 16 of his career? Like, I mean, it's getting close. And we talked about, what was the stat? You said the last time a division had all 8 teams with 80 or more points was 2019.
Yeah, I think that was Ty's stat. So
2019, we said it, and then I looked at Dom Luszczyszyn's model at The Athletic yesterday, and he had all 8 teams in the Atlantic north of 80 points.
But how many?
We felt it, we thought it, and then his model confirmed it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is last year Tampa had 7 more points than Detroit. They had 14 more than Buffalo, 20 more than Montreal, and 20 more than Ottawa and 22 more than Montreal. So it's still a pretty big gap. Like 7 points is, I know people, it's only 3 wins, but 3 or 4 wins is still a lot. So,
but think about all the other points that those teams are going to get from other teams in the division. If the Tampa Bay, I'm happy to make this bold prediction. If the Tampa Bay Lightning make the playoffs, which is obviously entirely possible, I guarantee you it won't be by a bigger gap, 7 points.
So you have them 4th for sure, or do you think everybody's going to?
I have them 5th. I have Buffalo in.
Okay.
And I know that was not a great opening weekend in Prague for the Sabres. Doesn't leave anyone feeling great about that prediction. I can tell you that.
No, still can't score. Also, I got clarification, Frank. It was because obviously 67, 68, the expansion teams were all in one division. So they didn't include that because obviously you're guaranteed to make the playoffs for the 6 teams. So it's since 68, 69 that only 3 new franchises have managed to make the playoffs: Edmonton, Hartford, and Vegas. So just clarification on that. And that goes back to teams like, Vancouver, Buffalo, everybody who came in afterwards, et cetera, after that. And in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, and now with Utah in the 2000s and 20s. So there are a few other notes. Jeremy Swayman got his contract, and I'm fascinated by, I've been looking at the numbers, and we see that goaltenders are starting fewer games now than they used to. Right back in the Marty Brodeur days, Grant Fuhr, for goodness sakes, a record that's never going to be broken. You look at how they're paying goalies, and the cap has gone up, but the highest goalie payments have gone down, right? Since Carey Price, Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, no one's getting more than them. I know there's talk that Shesterkin might, and I saw you write that he will.
He will, yes. Whether it's in New York or not is the question.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. When I look at goaltending, and we see how much you can be a great goaltender, but some of your numbers are going to be predicated by the system and the defense you play in front of you. Whereas I look at the top line forwards, there's not a lot of systems offensively, right? The top best guys, they continue to score points kind of regardless sometimes who they play with or not. Might differentiate 5 or 6 points here or there, but the McDavid, Draisaitl's, Matthews, McKinnon, it's not like they play a different system per se between coaches. So I get the understanding of why teams like, well, hey, I like goaltending. I get that goaltending is important, but it's important if you have a good system. If you have the best goalie in a terrible system, goalie rarely is going to be the difference maker.
Well, I understand what you're saying about the cap numbers changing for goalies. That's kind of what highlights the Bruins going against the grain here. Look at what the Toronto Maple Leafs are spending in goaltending this year. Look at what the Washington Capitals are spending in goaltending this year. Heck, even look at the Edmonton Oilers, Stanley Cup favorite heading into the year, are not spending a lot on goaltending. They're spending half of what the Bruins are spending on one guy. A lot of teams are viewing it from how close to an elite goalie can we get numbers wise without paying an elite price, which I think is the smart calculation given two things. One, you've got a stout team in front of them, to your point, that can provide more support or good support. And two, that you're in a position to really go after it and succeed in the sense that you're spending and redistributing that money to star players, right? You don't want to have a bunch of 7, 5, $4, $3 million players and then still not spend on goaltending. That to me doesn't make a ton of sense. It also is predicated on one other thing, which is you've got to kind of be in that elite circle of 5 to 7 top end goalies. The last thing you want to do is end up paying big money and big term to a guy that ends up ultimately, because the position is so fickle, being in the mid tier of goalies. What's interesting about Swayman's deal is that his percentage of cap is actually less than Tuukka Rask 10 plus years ago. Percentage of cap, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So who's going to put the Bruins in a better position for success? Is it Swayman or is it a tandem of half the price? I think they're probably making a pretty solid bet on Swayman at age 25. And among the things that I got roasted for on social media on Monday, some of them deserved, this idea that paying a goalie that much money, that percentage of cap, who sits on your bench 33% of the season, people were saying, yeah, but McDavid sits on the bench for 65% of the game. The difference is Connor McDavid impacts all 82 games.
And he impacts all 3 zones.
But that's the part that I felt like was kind of lost on people. When I say it's an interesting decision to devote that much cap space to someone that doesn't play 33% of the year, by the way, 33% of the year is if they are fully healthy. The difference with forwards is, or defense or whatever you want to pay any skater, is that they're making an impact every game. Whether it's 20 minutes.
And they can have an impact positively or negatively in all 3 zones. The goalie's only impact in the defensive zone. So now it's an important position, don't get me wrong, but I see why the goalie union is upset that their number really hasn't gone up but their usage has actually gone down. That's what,
and I think it's only going to continue to go down based on sports science.
Yeah. I wonder I don't know how much, do you think it gets lower than 55? Like maybe a game or 2, but I think your starting goalie still, at times I wonder if, we talk about these athletes and they're better trained, they sleep better, they eat better, they exercise better, they got better treatment, yet they don't play as much. Like you look in baseball and, pitchers.
I was going to say starting pitchers continue to go down. It's not unusual to see guys lifted in the 5th inning now.
Yeah.
And they still only pitch every 5 days.
Yeah. Not sure it's right though. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. I look at goalies, and if I look at NHL goalie for all their flexibility and everything, I'm like, if you're a good, competent NHLer, why can't you play 55 games?
I think if you were to ask coaches and GMs, that's the magic number.
Yeah. And so, and on a non-NHL note, if NHL goalies are only playing 55 games a year as grown, fully established bodies, we might want to question the number of games that young goalies are playing at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, when their body's still growing and how much potential damage you're doing to them. Just a thought.
Just to add in there, like, I don't know what it's like in your area, but for us, we don't have enough goalies. We're at such a shortage of goalies. There are teams at the start of every season that are saying, hey, we don't have one. Is anyone available? You can play for free this year. That's the way it works here.
Yeah, we have one goalie on my team, and he's actually on the IR right now. He broke his elbow in a skateboarding accident in the off season, so he should be back. But yeah, so we're using emergency goalies for the first month. So, but that's
so when you say emergency goalie, is that just another kid you find at the rink, or is that other player on your team that plays goalie?
No, gosh, no. We've had
that. Like, we had our goalie break our foot last year, and we just had like skaters come in and play goalie.
Well, no, we're in the St. Albert Association, so you have you can either have kids in the same tier as you, or tiers below, but obviously not any tiers above your team. So I have a list of 4 or 5, and hopefully through schedules, we only need it for another 2 weeks, and then we should be okay. So so far, I've been able to get it. We haven't had as many goalies at practice, which for some drills isn't ideal, but that's first world problems there. At least we have a regular goalie once he gets good to go. So that'll be fine. Now, a few other notes, Frank, is we mentioned Buffalo, New Jersey. It's 2 games, but I will say this. If there's one fan base and one organization that 2 losses could cause people to get upset, I understand it's Buffalo. They haven't made the playoffs for 13 straight seasons. Last year, offense was a big problem, and they go overseas. They lose both games. They only score a goal in each game. And in the second game, Frank, the Devils outshot them basically 2-1. And I get that New Jersey's a good team, but if you want to make the playoffs, you can't just say, well, we're only going to lose to the good teams. Well, then guess what? You ain't making the playoffs. And I know it's only 2 games, but I will say this about the Sabres. That is one team they got to find their offense, and they got to find it fast.
Yeah, the goal scoring last year was, to me, a huge surprise, given Tage Thompson and some other really talented players they almost all had down years. I still think 2 things. Again, early in the season, 2 games in, overseas, a lot of, it's not a normal environment, all those things. Not a pass, but to me, I don't put a ton of stock or faith into them. I still think the Sabres are going to win on the strength of their back end. I had this, a message from a fan yesterday reading when I said the Sabres are going to make it. I still put their top 4 defensemen, not their top 6. I put their top 4 up against any team in the East. When you go Dahlin, Power, Byram, and Samuelson, so like the next best team in the East, or you could say the best team in the East with their defense, Boston.
So Boston. I like the Rangers top 4.
Yeah. Okay. So we go McAvoy, Carlo, Lindholm, and Zadorov. I'd make the argument that the Sabres, Dahlin, and Power are higher end than those 2 guys are, than whatever other teams are going to throw at you. Maybe not Fox. But anyway, the point being, it's an interesting debate, right? It's an argument we could have around and around in circles and all make really good points. That needs to be the backbone and strength of this team. And I also think there's something too, when you're wearing the weight of 13 years of playoff drought, even though some of these guys weren't even in the organization last year, let alone 13 years ago, no one's there. Kevin Adams has said point blank, it's go time. When you hear that, when you know that, when people are talking about the drought and you need to get off to a good start, I just think it's a compounding effect. Like, there's a balance, I think, and a fine line between not putting too much heat on yourself to get out of the gate strong and just kind of being comfortable and playing. Does that make any sense?
It does. Funny enough, their head coach was there the last time they made the playoffs, and then missed for the first few, and then left and did come back for a circle. So you probably, maybe you address it once, but then you definitely don't ever think about it. It's not going to be good. And I'm sure a lot of the players that's not there, but I just say the fans, as the one thing the players are cognizant of is their offense wasn't good enough last year at all. And I could see if New Jersey and you had Markstrom had to stand on his head and Jake Allen stand on their heads to only limit your team to 1 goal. That wasn't the case in Saturday's game. Frank, I don't know if you watched that game. It was a 10 a.m. Start time on. Flow did not generate much. And to me, when your offense, it's 2 years. Now I know it's 1 year, but you start off like that for a team that's been together. Like a lot of these other teams in the preseason, they barely play with their NHL roster together, right? Buffalo they're limited. What they have 26 guys, I think, over in Europe, right? So they basically had their guys for 3 weeks. It's no excuse to me to have their offense come out sputtering. Now, like you said, it's only 2 games. But 2 games for a team that struggles offensively, if suddenly that's 6, 7, 8 in that tight division, I think the teams if you can avoid a lengthy drought, and lengthy doesn't even have to be 10 games, and it might only be 6 or 7 or 8. That could be the difference in the course of a season of you missing the playoffs in that division.
I agree. I'm just saying when you need to get off to that great start and you have 2 games like that, it's like you're just in your own head at some point.
Yeah. Now, Frank, another stat I wanted to bring up today because I found it was interesting after I uncovered it, and it'll be in the article. There's one team in the NHL that has been the worst team in the league 3-on-3 the last 2 seasons. They've lost 19 games in overtime over the last 2 years. And this is a team that is hoping to have a quick retool. It's the Pittsburgh Penguins, Frank. 19 overtime losses, not shootouts, just in 3-on-3. Obviously, they're 3-4 in shootout games over the last 2 years. And when you look at they missed the playoffs by minimal margins each year, 1 and 3 points. It's funny that I know they've revamped their bottom 6, but your bottom 6 doesn't play a lot 3-on-3. It's such a tight part. The Penguins, it's shocking to me that they're that bad. They got the most losses 3-on-3 of any team in the NHL the last 2 seasons.
I mean, one of the first things I said about the Penguins a few weeks back in our Metro Division preview was they have to play with more pace. Like the pace is abundantly evident when you get to OT. It's no surprise that the teams that skate the best and skate the most, actually, and I could find the numbers for you, are the teams that have the most success. Like the Edmonton Oilers last year, I think skated 17 more miles than the next closest team in the league, which I think was the Florida Panthers. They're crazy numbers. It all adds up. I think in the end, the correlation between distance, speed, all those things, like it all goes together.
Did you say 17 more miles combined as a team?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but that is I think they skated 370 miles, and I think the next closest team was 353.
Whew. That's 17 miles. That's a significant difference, man.
But that's what I'm saying. When you look at the teams that skated the most last season, I think they ended up being the top 4 teams in the playoffs, and the numbers were only from the regular season.
Yeah. So you got less stationary, more movement going on for your team is what you're saying. So
I'd love to find that if I could quickly.
Or is it you're talking miles skated, not an average of miles per hour? Obviously that'd be impossible. So it'd have to be miles. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So team, you got to have speed, you got to move it. Frank,
here you go. I did find it. Here we go. Okay, so the total skating miles last season, I apologize. The McDavid skated 378 miles. He was the leader. He had 23 more than the next closest player, who actually is also on Edmonton. Do you want to guess?
Bouchard.
Yes, 355 miles. And then Sam Reinhart was at 350. Total distance traveled last year. I was incorrect. I got confused between McDavid and Edmonton. The Panthers skated 4,806 miles. The second most miles skated last year was the Dallas Stars, they actually tied with the Oilers. 4,766. Fourth was the Rangers. Fifth was the Bruins. Sixth was the Canes. Seventh was the Canucks. Eighth was the Abs. Those are 8 of the best teams in the league. It's not really my point is, it's not really an accident that the teams that skate the most are the best teams in the league.
Yeah, that is a good stat because it illustrates, the game is about motion now, and you got to be moving. And the teams that are standing aren't. They're just they're getting skated by, and they're losing games. So you look at those top 8. Was there any team in the if you can get that list up quick, Frank? So the top 8. Was there any team in the top 15 who didn't make the playoffs that was a skating team?
I only see the top 10 here, and all 10 were playoff teams.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
And here, let me see. That says the full list is here. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes. The Calgary Flames did not make the playoffs, and they were 15th.
15th. Okay. So we're kind of right on the cusp.
Tampa Bay Lightning did make the playoffs, and they were tied for 22nd.
Oh, well, there's always an outlier in every statistical number that we look at. So that's
but maybe that lends itself to the prediction for this year. Maybe this is the year that the Lightning fall back. I don't know.
Well, I got to look. Did they? Because I'm not sure McDonough's going to be skating more. Although Sergachev only played. That's the other thing. Sergachev only played 31 games for them last year, right? So it's in the regular season. So it's a loss, but they made the playoffs 98 points without him for 51 games. So
yeah, I just want to give some credit to Xing Man Chung, who provided that NHL Edge analysis and sent it to me. So appreciate that flowed into my inbox. I read it, filed it away, didn't do anything with it. But when we were just talking about skating and speed and pace, that really, it rung a bell.
And McDavid, you mentioned, led, Frank, and he also, I think, missed 7 games. So
correct. He led he led the entire league by 23 miles.
Yeah. Well, it helps when you're that fast. You get up to speed quicker, so you go farther. Also, but he is hunting. He is circling all the time.
Do you know that he did not have the top speed last year, though? No,
I knew that.
Owen Tippett from the Flyers, 24.21 miles an hour. McDavid was second, 2/100ths of a mile per hour.
But go look at how many bursts of 20. Nathan McKinnon is absolutely a burst machine last year. I remember looking that up at NHL Edge, well above anybody else. And he is so powerful and explosive.
Yeah, McKinnon was 4th in total miles traveled.
Yeah. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk.
What's up, boys? Back with a new edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by our friends at Bet365. It's the largest sports betting platform globally, and you can get in on the action today by using the promo code DAILY365. Download the app, use the promo code DAILY365. Get in on a huge range of markets, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. I got 3 buy or sell questions for you guys. And with the regular season, kind of kicking off today, I know there were the Europe games, but it's a good time to revisit the Stanley Cup odds. The Oilers lead the way at plus 800, but the Devils are the second team on the list and the highest team in the East. Frank, are you buying or selling on the Devils having the best chance to come out of the Eastern Conference this year?
No, I'm not buying that. No, I have the Devils winning the division in the regular season, but going from non-playoff team, and yes, I know they won around the year prior, and I get it. But we've also talked about how incredibly rare it is for teams that don't make the playoffs to then just go on a deep run and have a chance to win. It kind of takes years to build to that point. I don't know that I was always necessarily a subscriber to the theory, but I do think there's something to it. And yeah, I wouldn't bet on that.
Okay.
No, there's lots of good teams, and I like the Devils, but it would easily for me take the field. I just think there's too many other good teams.
By the way, I picked the Bruins to get out of the East this year. Who was your pick, Jay?
Rangers.
Ooh, the Rangers. Rangers are plus 700s. They're fourth on the list. And the Bruins, you got to go down a little bit further there. They're plus 900 coming in at seventh on the list. So Rangers at fourth, Bruins at seventh. The Panthers and Hurricanes round out the top three, according to Bet365.
I think people are sleeping on the Bruins. They added a first line center and a top four defenseman.
Yeah.
What I mean, how many teams went out and did that this year? That defense, Charlie McAvoy is the smallest guy. They're giants.
Yeah, and they didn't really lose anyone of substance, did they? Like everyone just kind of got re-slotted down nicely in the lineup.
Yeah, they lost some depth scoring, like James Van Riemsdyk, 38 point, like guys like that. But they didn't lose any key pieces. And in fact, everyone should be better positioned to compete because of what you said about them moving down.
Well, I would say losing Linus Ullmark is a decent loss.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair.
But
how does Korpisalo look in front of a better structured defense? Going back to the exact same conversation we were just having about goalies a little bit ago.
No.
Second one I got for you guys, Alexander Ovechkin. Buy or sell on him being a 35 goals scorer. And I also have a fun history nugget to go after, but buy or sell on him scoring 35 this year, Greg's.
He had 22 goals or 23 goals in the final 36 games last year. You know what? Usually when you're getting older, you think, oh, they'll slow down. The second half is worse. Not for Ovi. Now I know the first half didn't go well at all for him. What do you have? 8 goals in the first part of the first 40 whatever it was games. But yeah, I'm gonna say Ovi. I have him scoring. I have him breaking the record this year. I think he will be highly motivated. Needs 42 to do it, and I have Ovi getting 42. Actually, I think 43.
Wow. I think he's gonna. I said number 8 will be the great 8 will be 8 away. I think I have him at 34. So Tyler, I'm buying. I mean, can he get to 35? Yes, for sure. It's only 3 more or 4 more than last year, which obviously he's never had a start like that in his career. He got to the All-Star break. He had 8 goals.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen. So he'll be close, but I just, man, 42, 43 is a big number.
It's a lot. Last prediction.
Yeah, it's Ovi, man. Like it's hard when I watch what I did in the second half. I'm just like, I just the great players. I don't know. There's something about them. They know how to they just get amped up. And the Capitals last season that is the fewest goals their franchises scored in the salary cap era, excluding the shortened seasons of 21 and 13. You know what? Even the year they had only 69 games, they scored 20 more goals. So I think the Devils, they went out. I think they added a lot to their team. And so I think Ovi's just by osmosis, there's going to be other guys around him that are going to help. They're going to be better.
Okay. So 2 things. One, if Ovi breaks the record this year, does he just retire? Like, what does he have left to play for next year in the final year?
900 goals, man. I think like he'll keep playing for sure.
Okay. And 2, if Alex Ovechkin, not if, we know he's going to set the record. So if it's not this year, it's going to be next year for sure. If he does Austin Matthews ultimately break it?
Well, it's a good question because through 8 seasons, Ovi had 371 goals. Matthews has had 368. Now, Ovi had the shortened season, right? So did Matthews. Now, Matthews has had more injuries, but that's not Ovi's fault, right? The thing about Ovechkin, Frank, how about this? He's only missed 35 games due to injury. Now, he's missed
He's a horse.
59 in his career. Yeah, he's missed 59 in his career, 10 of them for suspensions, including one where he got suspended 3 games for skipping the All-Star game, for God's sake. He missed some games for personal reasons, and then he missed games due to COVID. I think it was 6. And so 35 games injured his whole career. Like, the guy is a freak. Oh, by the way, he has the 3rd most hits in the NHL in the salary cap era, behind Clutterbuck and Matt Martin. So he's a scoring machine who's a physical beast. And I think Matthews will be close. But what Ovi did was he kept scoring 50 goals later on, right? So Matthews has had the 60-plus goal seasons twice already, and he's still behind Ovi. So, yeah, I think it's going to be
actually
hard.
not behind Ovi. Just FYI.
Through 8 seasons?
No. Through the same number of games, Matthews
No, 8 seasons. I'm not going games. I just said
you got to do seasons.
Why do you have to do seasons?
Because
missing games, like being hurt, is a knock on Matthews.
Yes, that's why I went 8 seasons. Each guy had one 40. And actually Matthews had a 56. Ovi had a 48. Right. So, and then.
Matthews also has a 69. Ovi's never gotten there.
No. I understand. But I'm just talking about longevity. For him to break the record, he's got to match the longevity of Ovechkin. And early on in their career, he's been more injury prone. I hope it's behind him. I'd love to see him chase it.
But on just the games played, and look, you're right. Longevity, like you're 100% correct. Just saying, on a pure pace perspective, Matthews actually has the edge, and actually by a somewhat significant margin. But can Matthews play? Ovi, if he plays the full year this year, is going to cross 1,500 games. Can Matthews play 1,500 games? He needs to basically 3x what he's done to this point.
The advantage that Matthews has is the era he's playing in now is much more offensive than the first 10 years of Ovi's career. So that's the advantage he has.
But what will it look like in 10 more years, which is insane to think about?
Yeah, I don't think the NHL is ever going back to the dead puck era and the clutch and grab crap that we used to have to watch when, 3-2, 2-1 games. It was awful.
It wasn't clutch and grab for most of the 2010s, and it still was not near the level of offense we have now.
Yeah. Power plays help. And that's the thing. I think, honestly, if Auston Matthews is going to beat him, they got to become a better power play scorer. I don't understand why, when you have the advantage, Matthews isn't dominating as a shooter on the power play. It makes no sense to me. It is honestly the most perplexing thing I look at when I see him, because he's got such a great shot, that they haven't been able to use that weapon as consistently on the power play as they should be. It's stunning to me.
Do you know what the craziest Ovechkin stat is? Sorry to hijack, buy or sell. But the craziest Ovechkin stat is 312 power play goals.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know if Ovi never scored an even strength goal in his life, he'd still be in the top 200 of all time?
Oh, yeah.
Like we're talking full-blown long NHL careers. Like, you're having an unreal career if you had 300 goals.
No.
He's done that just on the man advantage.
Buddy, Ovi is, I think at times it's crazy to say, but like Ovi's goal scoring, his physicality, everything about him. I like, to me, the uninformed are the ones who use the most asinine term in hockey, power play merchant. Like it's somehow a negative. What? It takes skill to score goals. And I think Auston Matthews is a highly skilled player. Maybe right now, today, he's the best goal scorer in the game. Ovechkin historically is going to be, but right now Matthews is the best one today, but he can't score in the power play. And people overlook it. Oh, well, that's okay. No, it's not. To me, Toronto is not maximizing their biggest weapon often enough on the man advantage. It makes no sense.
One more thing, if you want to add a little, or if we want to add a little controversy or get some fans fired up in this segment, if Matthews does break it one day, is he in a Leafs jersey when he does it?
Oh my God.
No one's going to take that bait from me.
Yeah, I just had the world's biggest eye roll.
Wow.
He's now 3 contracts in with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Does anyone believe him yet that he actually likes it there?
No.
Oh, God. He's just super smart in how he structures his contracts. He's always getting max dollars every 4 or 5 years.
Also,
Well, at least the one good thing about being in Utah today is that at least we can no longer ever talk about Matthews to Arizona.
Oh, yes. Thank God.
Well,
Yeah,
at least until there's a new team there.
Like he was going to go there. Hey, guys, let me go to the dumpster fire of the league.
by the way, Bet365 has Ovi's over-under for goals this year at 29.5. That feels criminally low. I feel like he's getting to 30 no matter what, but that's where his line is set. Yeah, I do have one more for you guys, and it is about this year's rookie class. I'm not going to ask you for your Calder Trophy pick, but I'm going to ask you for which rookie you think will be the most productive this year. Who puts up the most points? The leaderboard right now on Bet365. Tied for the top spot, Celebrini and Michkov, both at plus 300. And then it goes Stankoven, Cutter Gauthier, and Will Smith in the top 5. Frank, highest scoring rookie this year. You buying or selling on one of Michkov or Celebrini?
Buying on Michkov. Okay. And also buying on most goals from Cutter Gauthier. And with all that said, I think Lane Hudson wins the Calder.
Wow.
Really? Yeah, I have. I'm going with Michkov to win the Calder. I think that extra year, you're a little bit older. That always helps for players. Extra few years. I think that's a big benefit to him over Celebrini. I know people are going to be high in Celebrini, and that's great. But no, I will go with Matvei Michkov. Also, a little fun one for you, Frank.
Fun guy today.
Yeah. Since the 1990s, there's been 5 teams since 1990, 5 teams who had the number 1 overall pick debut the same year as the rookie head coach, which of course is what's happening with the Sharks and Warsofsky and Celebrini this year. Only 1 team made the playoffs. You know who it was?
Colorado Avalanche.
2014. Nathan MacKinnon and Patrick Waugh. Yeah. McKinnon won the Rookie of the Year, but Kruger and Yakupov for Edmonton, Olczyk and Fleury for Pittsburgh in 2004, Kurt Fraser and Patrick Stepan with Atlanta, and Dave Chambers and Owen Nolan with Quebec, now Colorado in 1990.
You know, the amazing part about that is very few of those guys ended up coaching long term. I think that was Ed Olczyk's only full season.
Yeah.
Go through the list. It's
Ralph Kruger got a short stint again. He had 1 year in Edmonton, then came back for a brief time in Buffalo. Patrick was the one who had it a bit, right? And then he was out of the league for a long time, and now he's back in. But yeah, not many.
All right, that is a wrap, gentlemen, on this week's edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by Bet365.
A few other things to watch for this year, Frank. The Shen brothers, who I know you know quite well, could become the first brother duo in NHL history to each play their 1,000th game in the same season.
Okay. Which is
nice little.
I don't know that anyone would have necessarily predicted that 8 years ago with 100% so many games ahead. Yeah, that's a good stat.
Yeah. And there's only been, they could be the 7th set of brothers to each play 1,000 games. You think you could name the 6 sets of brothers to each play 1,000 games?
No, I don't. I'm struggling to name them. The
Courtnalls, Jeff and Russ, the Hatchers, Kevin and Darian, the Koivu brothers, Nina Myers, the Sedins, Brent and Ron Sutter, and then there's one sibling trio who's all played 1,000, the Stalls.
Yeah, the Sutters were the only ones that I was going to guess off the top of my head.
Yeah, so
not getting the Sedins was pretty embarrassing, though.
I thought that was the one where I thought, okay, most people are going to get the Sedins, but and even the Sedins, funny enough, didn't play their. That was the one, but. John Hurd at the NHL stats department, when I sent that out, because I noticed both Shen brothers are now obviously they both have to stay healthy, right? Luke only needs 4 games to get there, whereas Braden needs, I think it's 60 games, which he's more than capable of playing. But injuries might be a small factor. But I was surprised when the Sedins didn't do it in the same year, according to John at NHL.com.
So one last thing before we go, what is one prediction? And this isn't a personal thing at all, but what is one prediction that you saw on the internet for this season that absolutely blew your mind? And you were like, how does someone get to that point? For me, I saw some people picking Vegas to miss the playoffs. And I guess I just don't see the path.
Yeah.
Obviously anything's possible, but I think Vegas is better than they were last year.
Oh, I think it'd be Vegas. Like, I made a pick because I wanted to change. And so I'll be bluntly honest about it. I thought, I'm like, at some point, something has to give in the Atlantic Division. And so that was this year for me. And the team I picked to not make it was Boston. And I'm sure a lot of people you're an idiot, and I can see why. But I went off, goalie missing camp. Now I made that pick before the Swayman signing, thinking that even if it goes in 2 or 3 extra weeks, I thought the division would be that tight that it might be a deciding factor. So I could probably go with my own one that raises.
Yeah, that's one I can't. That does not I'm trying to wrap my brain around that, and I just don't see it. But
yeah, and I understand it 100%. But you just think at some point one of those teams is going to break through, but they're not all going to. I'll say that. You got 3 of the longest droughts in the league, all in the same division, Frank, and we all know Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo. Not all 3 are making the playoffs. That thing, I can guarantee you that's not happening. There's no chance all 3 of them make it.
History would suggest that we are typically, to start a year, not bold enough. That every year there's somewhere between 5 and 7 of the 16 playoff teams that turn over. Every single season. That's a statistical average. In most of our predictions, yes, we do not have enough turnover.
Well, but and then you know what though? I guess it's the Atlantic Division because all 4 of them made it, right? You had Carolina. So there was only one change last year in the East, right? Washington for the Devils, right? The other 7 were all in. Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg. So Minnesota was out. That's 2, and Seattle. So there's only 3 last year.
Okay,
right. Seattle was out.
The statistical average is between 5 and 7.
Well, then maybe you're due for a big one this year. We'll see. There's Seattle, Ottawa, Utah, Detroit, Buffalo. Lots of people think some of those teams could get in. Minnesota maybe gets back in the mix. So it'll be fun. I'm looking, thankfully the season's here. Look forward to it. I'm excited about it. And I'm more so interested, Frank, on how many guys score 120 points in the NHL this year.
7? I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Because, I think McDavid's kind of a foregone conclusion that he's going to do it. Nikita Kucherov, who, by the way, Frank, I think Nikita Kucherov doesn't get enough credit for what an elite playmaker he is. If you look at, he's already had.
Wait a second. Really? I voted him number 1 for Hart last year.
No, I said playmaker. No one, we talk about him, good player, but no one ever talks about his dishing ability. He's already had 3.
What do you mean no one ever talks about it?
Well, not to the level. I don't ever see, because if you talk about in the history of the game, Nikita Kucherov's entering territory where very few players have ever had, first of all, not many players have ever had 3 80 assist seasons, which he's already done, right? I think there's only 6 other guys. And 2 of them in Denny Savard and Adam Oates only did it 3 times. So if he gets it another one, now he's up in the top 5 or 6. It's just, I've never seen that really discussed about his elite level ability to rack up assists in the NHL. And I know that some people have tried to downplay secondary assists, which is another thing that boggles my mind. But Kucherov is entering territory we haven't seen many players do in the 100+ year history of the league.
He's going to go down as one of the best right wings of all time.
Oh God, yeah.
He's got four 100-point seasons. He's led the league in scoring twice. He's got a heart. I mean,
multiple cups.
Multiple cups. Like, I don't
know, but I just when you hear people talk about, best players in the game, sometimes they don't even have Kucherov in the top 5. I don't get it. He's in top 5 all day for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that was just a random thought about it. So see if he could get 80 again this year. Frankie, enjoy Utah.
Yeah, have a great year.
Do they have anything? Do you know they have anything special planned for their home opener?
Well, do you listen to Shabuzi at all?
He's got like that country dance song.
He's doing the pregame concert just behind me in the street, and there's some secrets. I don't know all of them yet. Like, I know the players have some surprises that they're walking into today with their locker room being completed that they didn't know about. So I think they're probably going to be pretty excited today. Short of that, I don't know. We'll see. That's what makes being here fun.
Oh, well, enjoy Utah. That was episode 325 of the Rundown, brought to you by Fountain Tire. They specialize in tire and auto service. You don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service because Fountain Tire has both. Book yours today at fountaintire.com. We will chat with you on Thursday as we are back to twice a week on the Rundown.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Seravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.